The South African government just signed into effect what used to be the bill for expropriation without compensation, which is now the Act for Expropriation Without Compensation. This means that assets, including land, can be legally expropriated while the government pays back a zero value to the rightful owner and then reuse this assets or land for something that they claim to be public benefit. What it means in practice is that land can be taken, whether that be from farmers, whether that be from anyone, and given to whoever the ANC deems worthy. What is Orania's answer to this? With me I have Gawie Snyman. Gawie is the town manager, the head of the Orania Dorpsraad or town council, and we will discuss not only this bill but also the implications for Afrikaners in general and for Orania in specific. What is Orania's reaction to this new bill and this act of communism? Gawie, welcome very much.
Thank you, Joost. It's a privilege to be here.
Gawie, what is your initial thoughts on this bill?
Well, Joost, it doesn't actually come as a surprise. It's been waiting in the wings for a while now. I think the timing came as a surprise just after Trump won, so to a certain extent that was surprising. But I mean, us at Orania knew we're actually in a dispensational crisis, not a governance crisis. And that's why Orania exists. That's why we started Orania. That's why we're building every day on Orania. And that's what we believe is actually the signs that we saw, or the pioneers of Orania saw, coming to fruition now, and which actually shows everyone that Republican freedom for the Afrikaner people is actually the only real sustainable mechanism or answer to this dispensational crisis that we have in South Africa.
The ANC government is communist in its founding. Would you agree that this is proof that the ANC, in order to have policies like taking land from people and redistribute it as you see fit, would you agree that this is proof that they are still very much inclined to their communist roots?
Oh, definitely. I mean, maybe some of our friends outside South Africa forgets it from time to time, but we talk about the tripartite alliance, and one of the alliance members is actually the South African Communist Party that's closely aligned with the African National Congress, the ANC, which is also the governing party or the biggest party in South Africa. But it definitely is communist roots. This is what we've all known to be. And the revolution, or the communist or socialist revolution, what they call in South Africa the National Democratic Revolution, which is actually a communist revolution, is still in full swing. And sometimes we just pass some of these milestones, and I think this is one of the next milestones that we've passed that's actually showing all warning signs that I want to reiterate this dispensational crisis is coming to a certain logical conclusion, and we need to get the correct answers for the correct problems. We need to identify the true problems, and then we can apply the right medicine.
Gawie, the bill, which is now an act, explicitly states that something can be expropriated and a null value or a zero value can be paid as compensation, which is absurd.
Yes.
But it's a legal technicality which on a very sneaky way has been snuck into to make it possible to take land. What else does this include? What else can the government now take from legal owners?
The people that are a bit more enlightened about the legal aspects of it tells me, and I'm sure there's a lot of role players that in the coming weeks will dissect this in all its glory or unglory, if I can put it like that. But we must remember, in terms of the act, property is very wide defined and actually very vague. So it can mean, at this stage people speculate, but it can almost mean anything from shares, money, whatever. Any type of asset you can think of can be included within the definition of property within this new act.
How we Afrikaners negotiated from the previous South African dispensation to the current one. They negotiated, and in the 90s there was an agreement that education, Afrikaners should have their own mother tongue education, and that property rights should be respected. Respect for property rights is a basic function of a state. Both of these negotiated terms are now in new laws thrown to the wind, trampled upon. Both mother tongue education for Afrikaners and the right to decide about your own schooling and property rights. How should Afrikaners react now?
I think first of all I want to say we must remember a communist is a communist is a communist. So what happened during the transitional years into the new dispensation, certain, how can I say, scope was given for private property rights, for mother tongue education and so on. And what they refer to is the balance of forces, and they make certain concessions. Once they get the power and the balance of forces is aligned in a certain way, then they take certain steps. We all know the reference to the communist approach to revolution: 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So, but those of us that are enlightened, I want to get back to this, the pioneers of Orania actually foresaw this. This is why Orania was started. What Afrikaners should always keep in mind and bear in mind is that whatever government mechanism through the current dispensation is put in place is merely temporary. As long as that ideology is the driving force behind government, everything is temporary. So you need to think out of the proverbial box. You need to think of a new dispensation, something that changes the whole approach or the whole paradigm within which politics, or how can I say, Afrikaner interests are aligned. You should change the framework. Within the framework, especially because Afrikaners are a minority and there are numbers of other minorities as well, you always delivered over to the whims of the majority. And we must bear that in mind, and the fact that this was signed into law under a so-called government of national unity should also be a canary in the coal mine, to show you that within this dispensation, even when you think you've made some ground in strengthening your base or your position, it's always temporary. And the mechanisms, the checks and balances is not sufficient enough to protect Afrikaner interests in the southern point of Africa.
Short answer is also to say that as long as Afrikaners are left in a position where we are left open to the graces of the ANC government, to the grace of communists, to the grace of people that do not have our best interests at heart, we are in trouble. The only way forward, as you legitimately stated right now, is that Afrikaners must pursue freedom. If we do not pursue freedom, we will always, sometimes to a lesser and sometimes to a greater degree, be left to the grace of these people.
Definitely. As I said, freedom is what we must strive towards, and I want to emphasize Republican freedom. There's various degrees of freedom. To a large extent, we already experience large extents of freedom. But what this just shows is even this freedom that we have can always be threatened if we don't proceed on the road of self-determination up to the point of what we in Orania call Republican freedom.
Absolutely. Because meanwhile, our tax money that we pay duly and receive nothing in return on a municipal level, we are still paying income tax, and that tax money is actually being used to pass legislation like this. The irony is that we are keeping a system going that is actively working our demise, rejecting our rights to property, rejecting our rights as a nation, as Afrikaner folk to exist, and pushing us out of all institutions, whether that be educational or government, whilst denying us the right to mother tongue education. And if that is not enough to push Afrikaners to pursue Orania or models like Orania, then I don't think we will survive as a nation.
Exactly, Joost.
Gawie, finally, can Orania be expropriated, and how should we think about that?
There's always the risk. It will be disingenuous of us to say this doesn't pose a risk to Orania.
It's still Africa, and in Africa things are unpredictable.
Might is right to a large extent in politics all over the world, and this is another example of might makes right. So, yes, obviously there's a risk. The question with regards to the risk is, are we a soft target or are we a hard target? Now, we would say here in Orania, we're not a soft target, we're a hard target. We've got good international relations. We've got people concentrated here. We've even our model of ownership is a good mix of individual ownership with corporate or communal ownership.
Which is supposed to not be being open to expropriation, communal land ownership,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, indeed. But also just the mechanism in the fact that if you touch one of us, you touch all of us. Soft targets are mainly individuals, where certain land is, especially with regards to land, is isolated. One is taken at a time and expropriated, and the neighbors say, "Oh, geez, thanks. I'm glad it's not me." In Orania, we've got a different approach. If you touch one, you touch all. And then we've got institutions built to protect us legally and physically. And so whilst it is a threat and we need to address it, we don't need to be too worried that I would argue that we would be first in line, but we mustn't be naive and we mustn't just rest assured. This actually provides ground to push forward, to do what we are doing bigger, faster, more, to prop up your liaison, international liaising, to put that into a next gear and actually get people involved, get Afrikaners involved, get our allies involved, international allies involved, other traditional communities within Southern Africa and Africa. We already have good relations. We need to push that agenda forward at a ever increasing speed to actually make sure not only we defend Orania against a potential onslaught, but to actually further the cause of freedom.
Absolutely, and to protect Afrikaners still living outside of Orania, who's also got property rights, which is now in the fire line. We also want to help protect those, and as well as our community. We are, as Orania representatives, planning an international tour. More details will follow, but I think this is the time where we must mobilize international support and support of Afrikaners for our cause. It is critical for our survival. More information will follow, and in the meanwhile, Gawie, thank you very much. And if there are supporters of Orania or people who support this, who want to stand against this, please follow the link in the description if you want to support our cause. And share this, please, to other people who might find it useful and helpful. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gawie.
Thank you, Joost.